All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. You know, it's been a while since we've talked about the 2020 presidential election on this channel, but that's kind of one of the smaller themes that we cover here. And one of the candidates that I have done one upload on the past was Tim Ryan, who is a member of the House of Representatives representing Ohio's 13th congressional district. If I recall correctly, Tim Ryan entered into the House when he was only 30 years old, and he's now in his mid 40s. He was previously the representative for the 17th district of Ohio, and now he's representing the 13th. I hope I got all that right. I mean, it's been a while since I've looked at that stuff. But the reason why we're going to talk about him today is what I have here is a copy of his book, The Real Food Revolution. You know, it's like Tim Ryan has authored two books that are, I think, about very critical subjects that are relevant to kind of the well being of America. One is The Real Food Revolution, which I'm holding right here, and another one is called A Mindful Nation, which is all about mindfulness and mental awareness and bringing that into our education system. What I would say, though, about somebody like Tim Ryan is we aren't necessarily sure yet, as of this recording in early January 2019, whether or not Tim Ryan will be running for the White House in 2020. But what I can say is he has visited Iowa. He's been asked about it many times. He was expressing an enormous amount of interest in wanting to climb the ladders in the Democratic Party. He wanted to be Speaker of the House, but currently Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker. Now, I would also say, though, I'm not a big fan of purchasing political books. I really don't like to buy books about politics or religion. I'm all about using the local libraries, but this one was 99 cents on Kindle. I figured why not? It was something I wanted to read. But yeah, normally I'm just all about using the library, not paying for books about politics or religion, but I figured 99 cents was okay. I've been reading through the early parts of this, and it seems like it's covering a variety of interesting subjects, like, even just read a bit here. Thomas Jefferson is one of my heroes, a guiding light. He envisioned a country ruled by farmers. He also felt that industrialization, urbanization, and financial speculation would hurt the average citizen. Now, this brings us to a very critical thing, financial speculation. I mean, so much of what we have in our economic system here in America. It depends on the stock market going up and down, the speculative stock market, and that can really affect a lot of people day in and day out, and a lot of people are aware of that. And there are also some things that we can talk about associated with what Tim Ryan's saying. In a different section in the book, he was talking about how companies benefit from selling unhealthy food. And the United States Congress, which apparently he claims to come at firsthand, is talking about they make those companies richer. The companies that are selling like the artificial products, and it's all tied into many different things like the corn industry and the wheat industry. They sell their things to people who make Twinkies and so on and so forth and stuff like that. And this is actually an entire system. It's not really anything majorly calculated, but it's the farming industrial complex. That's what it's called. And he talks about it here in this book. But it's like the thing with that is speculation is a very big thing into that because Bob Woodward talks about speculation in his book Fear Inside the Trump White House, or Trump in the White House. It was like Fear Trump in the White House. I believe that's the subtitle. The thing with that is they say that the Chinese government knows every single congressional district in the United States of America. And when people are running for office, they can raise prices and lower prices. They can affect the markets. And the Chinese government can actually crash the U.S. markets in a single district, in a particular district. They have this down to a science. Bob Woodward said that the Chinese are a PhD at this and the U.S. are kindergarten students. I mean, you can take that for what you will. I mean, that was a book that was written to sell copies. But Tim Ryan says something very similar in this here when he's saying that this stuff is all a money-making grab. And what he really wants to talk about in this book, The Real Food Revolution, is to try and get away from this type of farming industrial complex where the money that Congress actually gives to companies, and including the corn farmers and the wheat farmers, it's all just streamlined toward making companies that sell artificial food products bigger, and these sort of kind of smaller organic farmers get smaller, like these sort of the people who are trying to develop organic farm living are just getting completely ignored. So the point is, they're making junk food more marketable. Organic food is like the prices are just going to keep rising, and he's trying to put forward a plan to get rid of that. That's what the point of this book is, the real food revolution. I'm just glad to hear somebody talking about this stuff, and I really think that the Democratic Party is really much they claim to be in favor of this stuff. Also, his other book, A Mindful Nation, where they want to talk about mental awareness. You know, like, why is Tim Ryan talking about this? Why is a congressman from Ohio who's a possible presidential candidate talking about organic food and mental awareness education? What does that have to do with anything in politics? Healthcare costs, school shootings, all of the tragedies that are associated with the United States of America. He wants to put forward a plan to try and take this stuff down a notch. Also, John Delaney, who is another representative running, he's a representative from Maryland running for the presidency. He says the same thing with housing. It's like, if you find a way to improve housing in America, people are going to be living in places that have lower amounts of infections, lower diseases, so they get sick less often, and then they have to go to the doctor less. It's the same thing with Tim Ryan's plan about organic farm-to-table living, improve the benefits for organic farmers, so then people are going to be eating healthier food, lower risks of diabetes, lower risks of high blood pressure, and, as well as, things like morbid obesity in itself. Make it so people get sick less often, and they have to go to the doctor less, lowering health costs. And his other book, A Mindful Nation, would be about the mental health aspects of that. The only thing with mental health is it's tied to school shootings. I mean, I would say, though, with this guy, Tim Ryan, he has some things where it's like he wants to stop problems before they start. I love having conversations about this. I think that there are genuinely some good ideas. Well, I was reading his book earlier today, this book here, The Real Food Revolution. There was one thing in it, though, and I got to give some pushback, because you can't be just, 100% on the bandwagon. You can't just be like, I'm following along blindly. He also says, though, that he is a very, very large believer in personal responsibility. I believe in self-care and taking personal responsibility, he writes. That's a key American value. I do not blame the citizen, the average consumer or taxpayer, for not being able to navigate a system that is rigged against him. And I was like, well, now hold on a second there, Congressman. I mean, you're saying that you believe in personal responsibility, but you've written 2 books about how people need to change their lives. I mean, you're saying that you believe in personal responsibility, but most of the personal responsibility conversations in America are quite different. They're pro junk food. They're pro, whatever mental state you're in, as long as you don't hurt anyone. They're going to be like, if you want to eat your Twinkies and your French fries and your, Diet Coke, I don't know what people like in these days, do it. You have the freedom to do so. I mean, he has this whole book here telling people about what they should eat and what they should not. Then he's saying, oh yeah, but I'm about personal responsibility. You do what you want. I mean, it's like, it's a two-sided coin, really. And I think that it's a little almost disingenuous to sort of say that you believe in people taking personal responsibility and making their own decisions, and then you've written a whole book telling them, yeah, but only do what I say. No, if you want to write just sort of something that's like a persuasive essay saying, I think the country would be better this way, well, he's a congressman and potential presidential candidate. Why not? I mean, we want to hear the ideas of people like that. It's good to know those things, but then it's a little bit masquerading to say that you're kind of giving the torch to the people and be like, yeah, I want the people to make their own decisions. Haha, no, I don't. I want them to use my ideas and make my decisions. But, it's like nobody's perfect. I can't say I'm even endorsing Tim Ryan. I don't even know everybody who is running, but I would say I like some of the ideas that have been expressed by Tim Ryan in his book here that I'm now reading, The Real Food Revolution, as well. I hope to get a copy someday of A Mindful Nation and have some more discussions about that particular one. But, Tim Ryan is someone who's been very opposed to the Republican tax bill. He is very big on lowering healthcare costs, as we mentioned. He is taken on a very vocal approach against the Republican Party. He talks a lot about reaching across the aisle, though. The intro to this book here, The Real Food Revolution, says the way that this has to be done is we need reaching across the aisle to kind of get things passed in Congress that are going to benefit all the American people, not just some. But furthermore, his two books that we talked about, A Mindful Nation and The Real Food Revolution, it's about ideas. I mean, they claim to be about ideas. It's not about putting these things directly into law. He wants to raise awareness of the subject, and it's like, you're not really going to be having these things that we're talking about, like, better food choices or more mental awareness education or more improved housing until people in the United States of America are aware of it. And there's one more part. It has to be profitable. Let's face it, America is a profit-driven country. I was actually somewhat thrilled when I heard Scott Adams, the writer and cartoonist Scott Adams, say that if you want green energy in America, green energy is only going to happen if there is a market for it. I mean, you can wave your little poster board at Big Oil and be like, hey, please don't drill in the Arctic, please. And they aren't really going to be listening to that because they want to make money, lots of money. I mean, it's almost like this is some sort of, business where that's like the whole point or something. But it's the same thing with, organic living. But what Tim Ryan is saying is the system is rigged. So he wants to raise awareness, and it's only going to happen first if the American people demand it, if the American people are aware of it. Second, if we can actually make this sort of, make healthier food more marketable so there is a profit. What Tim Ryan's trying to say is companies will sell this stuff if the people demand it. But to get the people to demand it, you have to raise awareness and running for president is one of the biggest things that you can do. Darryl W. Perry, a libertarian we talked about on this channel, was just like, he ran for president in 2016 because he said, if someone has ideas, that's not really that important to many people. But if that person is running for office, people are going to take their ideas more seriously. Well, with Tim Ryan, I definitely think he would want to run for president. It would definitely be a boost to his career. It could be an opportune time. But it's like, he's not very well known, I would say that. When it comes to Tim Ryan, very few people outside of Ohio seem to know who he is. I've had a couple conversations, and people ask me, who do you think the Democrats could put up against Donald Trump in 2020? And of course I mentioned Tim Ryan. I said, on the channel, we've talked about a handful of people. Tim Ryan, we talked about Kamala Harris, we talked about even John Delaney, as we mentioned. I don't think John Delaney is going to be the nomination, not even close, to be honest. But, I mean, we talked about these names. Nobody who'd ever heard of Tim Ryan. But everyone's focusing in on Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. I think the Democrats, and I'm not a Democrat, mind you, but I think the Democrats need to stay away from those kind of names that have already been through the cycle and look toward people like Tim Ryan and listen to people like Andrew Yang. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard will also throw her hat into the race. But the problem is Tulsi Gabbard has a lot of enemies. Tim Ryan is kind of somebody who is just there in the middle. Could he pull the middle ground voters? Yeah, absolutely. He's kind of just a center-left candidate who has some plans. I mean, the entire second half of his book is plans that he wants to put into action to improve, the food situation in America so people don't get sick in the future and we don't have these rising health costs. Not to mention the getting mental awareness and mindfulness taught in our schools. He has some plans and he has some ideas, so I think these are very good things that we can explore. And I really want to keep reading this book here, The Real Food Revolution. I found some good parts in it. I found some things I liked, and that one thing I told you about that I didn't like, that he's passing off, he's saying he's letting people have, taking responsibility for themselves, when in reality, he's the one making the big decisions. Well, that's all for me now. A little bit of an intro rant about Tim Ryan and his book, The Real Food Revolution. But that's all for me, and until next time.